All right, good evening. Welcome to the June 6th, 2022 meeting of the Marshfield Planning Board. The time is now 7:02 p.m. Tonight's meeting is being recorded by MCTV, and we are holding a live remote meeting via Zoom. Tonight, our members here are Katie O'Donnell. We're waiting on Nick Pepistratis. Fred Monaco will be absent tonight. Kevin Cantwell is here. I'm Mike Viviano, the chair, and our associate member is also absent. Also with us tonight is Greg Guimon, our town planner, and Karen Horn, our assistant town planner. At this time, I'll make a motion to open tonight's public meeting and waive the reading of the notice. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Fred. Oh,
It's not
Fred is
here.
not going to be here. Sorry about that. Nick. Oh, Nick's not here yet.
I'll second, Mike. Kevin Cantwell, second.
Well, we got Katie seconded. I just need you to say,
I'll say aye.
there we go. Thanks, Kevin. And Mike Viviano, aye. So the meeting is officially opened, and we'll move on to the A&R for 24 Bow Street.
I don't know if a representative is here for them. If not, I will explain what's going on.
Here for this?
Not seeing any hands come up.
Okay. I'll let you go, Greg.
So Bow Street is off of Old Main Street in Marshfield Hills. We have the larger Lot 1, which used to include Parcel A. The A&R plan, Parcel A is being subdivided off and given to the parcel next door, the Smith property, over to the left here. The Smiths currently drive over Parcel A to get access onto Bow Street. There is also another point of access going through just adjacent to Parcel A, and that goes to the back parcel, which is Reynolds back here. The reason we had asked it to be held up last time it was before us is because we wanted a note, and note number 5 was added, which
I didn't know it was just remote.
it's just remote, Joe.
Should I run home and get on my?
Yeah, you should probably run. How long will it take? We can try to.
Take me about 10-15 minutes to get home.
Okay. If you want, just sit here and we'll share the screen.
Oh,
Sorry. Note number 5, this plan was modified, modifies to December 20th, 1952. I'm going to show you that plan right now. So you can see it was a larger parcel, which is Parcel A is being cut out of, and it said right away across lands of Gardner Wood Freeman to the back parcels. So we wanted that reference, so if somebody was buying that piece of land, they would understand where it came from and how it got there, because they're leaving a portion of that right away for that back parcel in place. It is not creating a new house lot. The existing lot still has area and frontage, so the board can sign the plan.
Okay, thank you, Greg. I don't have any questions. Any questions from the board at all? Is anyone from the public here for this? Seeing none, I will make a motion that we approve the A&R for 24 Bow Street. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick has joined us. Nick?
Nick Pepistratis, aye.
Kevin?
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. That passes 4-0. Looks like we're going to skip. Oh, no, we're going to. Joe's there now, Greg?
It is here.
Okay. Next on the agenda was a B3 zoning modification discussion brought up by Joe Pasevich, who has hybrided our meeting. So, Greg, I'll let you.
that's a first. That's the first time I've ever done that.
Good job, Joe.
So I'm going to let Joe explain. He had raised a concern about the current B3 district. I call it the northern one of the three. There are three of them along 139 as you go from Fieldston or Upper Wrexham through Fieldston to Ocean Bluff. And he's talking about the lower portion of this upper one. And let me zoom in on that. Can you see that?
We can.
So there are businesses on the curve, but once you get south of Adams Street, the rest of it is all residential houses. And Joe, if you want to go ahead and talk.
Yeah, in this B3 zone, you can see how far off of Ocean Street it extends and how many residential properties it encompasses. I think there's close to 40 residents in that area. There used to be a business on the southernmost portion of that B3 zone. There was a business there called the Pioneer Grocery Store. And then up on the corner of Billings Road and Ocean Street, there was in the old days, it was the Checkerboard Restaurant, became the Daily Catch. And further on up at the corner of Adams and Ocean, there was a small variety store and lunch counter called Jimmy's. And then further on up, you come to the Fieldston Restaurant, the old Texaco station, and the Yogi's Liquor Store. And also, I think some of those,
Self-storage and
yeah, so the storage, right, the storage, self-storage area, and the BP gas station, or Ocean Bluff gas station. My concern came about because there was a hearing in the zoning board. By the way, the Checkerboard is gone now. That's now a residence under construction. The Jimmy's lunch counter is now a residence. The Pioneer grocery store is gone. It's a vacant lot. My concern was really raised when there was a zoning board hearing. A property owner on Hutchinson Road, I believe number 15 Hutchinson Road, came in asking for a special permit and a variance. They wanted to expand their house. It's a small cottage, and as you know, in that neighborhood, there were just row upon row of these small little Monopoly, I call them Monopoly greenhouses, if you know the game of Monopoly. And that's how that neighborhood was laid out back in the late 50s and early 60s. A lot of those houses have been modified. Some went up a story or a story and a half, and some added on, entryways and other various additions. There's still quite a few of them there that have their original footprints, and some of them had front porches that got enclosed or rear decks that got enclosed, small things, 6x8 generally. And so the applicant came in asking for a special permit and a variance. And they wanted to extend one wall of their cottage out by 8 feet, another wall of the cottage out by 9 feet, another wall of the cottage out by 10 feet, and then to redo the roof line. So to me, it was essentially a rebuild. And they asked that they be allowed to have a variance against setbacks. They wanted to change the setbacks. They didn't give any particular reason except that they wanted more room. You can watch the tape on the ZBA, a replay of the ZBA hearing from a week ago. Basically, it was just that they wanted more room to live in. The way the hearing progressed, it was decided that because they're in a B3 zone, their side setbacks are 5 feet. And their front setback is, I think, 15 or 20. Anyway, they're generally much less than you would expect or see in a residential zone. And so they said that they didn't even need a variance, that all they needed was a special permit because they're in a B3 zone and they can have minimal setbacks on the sides in particular. Of course, I asked about this during the meeting. I didn't believe that they were right, but they granted the permit anyway. Subsequent to that, I've heard rumblings that then that decision may somehow be rescinded or appealed. And I don't know yet what the status of that. But it's very alarming to me that they would ignore, I believe it's section 6.08 of the zoning law that says existing and permitted residential uses in the B or I district shall be subject to the dimensional density regulations of the nearest residential district. So the nearest residential district is R3, and that has 15-foot side setbacks. So it's very alarming to me that they would let that go through and claim that the B3 setbacks would apply to essentially a residential rebuild. And it's very alarming to me that in a neighborhood that's already very congested with, a lot of illegal additions that were put on back in the 60s and 70s, that, you basically got houses crammed up against each other. In many instances, some of the distances still apply. And a lot of houses are actually conforming to current residential R3 setbacks. But it's very alarming that that would be allowed to go through. And it makes me question even the need for a B3 district there now, with the main businesses on that strip of Ocean Street gone, all turning residential. Granted, the Pioneer vacant lot is still to be determined, I guess. But I wonder what the point is of having a B3 zone that extends 3 and 4, almost 5 houses off of Ocean Street. And, makes me want to try to have the zoning amended. I don't know what other safeguard there could be to avoiding people building little McMansions in a section of town like the Acre up near Brant Rock, that is, modest sized houses in a relatively affordable neighborhood. Most people know that I'm a 40B warrior. I don't believe in the 40B zoning law, but I believe there should be other considerations for what constitutes affordable housing. And here we have a neighborhood with relatively affordable housing that could be in jeopardy because of these kinds of projects.
Thank you, Joe. Greg, what is your understanding about a residential property in the B3? The way I always understood it was actually the way Joe explained it, that it goes to the closest zoning in there. Do you understand it that way?
Yep.
Okay, so obviously we're not the zoning board. They may have their difference of opinion. Joe, I didn't see that meeting, and I believe what you said. It sounds like that could have happened that way, and maybe they just needed a little further research into what the zoning actually is there. So I think it might already be protected by that if Greg and I understand zoning correctly on that.
Well, Mike,
Yeah.
I think his question to us was south of Adams Street, it's all residential.
Mhm.
And why don't we just rezone it to R3 to match the rest of the area? We do have a couple of houses up here off of Olympia and stuff that are split lots, that if we are going to get into a map change, we could potentially clean that up. We have some residential houses right here on Ocean Street, but we do have Clancy's like office and some construction on those 2 lots. So that one isn't as clear. We also have a couple.
Are we sure there's no businesses from 863, south down to 777?
From 849, which is the southern side of Adams, all the way down to 777, it's all residential.
Does somebody not have a home business that we may not be aware of that they're using for that purpose?
Home businesses are still covered under the home business subsection of the bylaw. But again, he's just asking to look into it.
Yeah.
We call that the northern section. There is also a middle section, which is by West Brook Street. And those are both residential units. There's no businesses there. And then there's one other piece, which I call the southern, and that's where just past the church and stuff, you have that sandwich shop on 563, and then 555 is like a liquor store and post office. So I wasn't thinking of changing anything there. But that's kind of what my understanding was. Joe was asking us to at least consider. So that's why he had asked to come on tonight.
Yeah, I think if we did a little research and find out that that's all residential, maybe that makes sense. Obviously, public hearing would have to happen, talk to the owners of those properties to see what they want to do. Joe, are you an owner of one of the properties in that B3?
I'm in the R3.
Okay, you're just outside of it.
Just the B3 boundary is just a few feet away beyond my northeast boundary.
Okay,
So
So
I'm
that's
on the Plymouth Ave side.
so that's good. Joe, I appreciate you bringing this up to us. I actually have a couple of zoning changes that I'm going to be discussing with Greg that I brought up in the last meeting that maybe this is completely separate from it, but maybe that would be good to work on all those at the same time and have that discussion about zoning at that point. And then we can look into it and talk to the neighbors or talk to all the owners there and see what their thoughts are on possibly changing that.
I guess it's possible to do some research into determining if there are some, you say, home businesses.
Well, I think just I can even just take a ride by and go and look and just kind of confirm that there isn't something there where I know you live there, so you drive by these things all the time and look at them. But I think this is possibly a really good change that could benefit the owners if they're all for it when we have that hearing.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for hearing me. I don't know what's going to happen to the case that I cited. I don't know if it's going to, I'm not sure yet. I understand it was going to be, but I don't know for sure. But I would ask the planning board and I'd ask the planner that when you do get the zoning board agenda, please, for our sake, be mindful of the situation. I don't think anybody on the zoning board read the application or even drove through the neighborhood to understand what kind of an impact it would have to put a big house on a 5,000 square foot lot. I know it would probably first trigger a substantial improvement from the building, under the building rules. But still, the amount of space it would take up and what it would do to the neighborhood. And again, in the long term, it could affect the affordability of a neighborhood like that. So when you do get the application in from the zoning board, please, I ask all of you to, keep that in mind. Keep those things in mind when you put your comments in.
All right. Any other comments from the board while we have Joe here still?
No, I think it's an interesting thing to look at. And I think it sounds like a good thing for us to look into to establish, I think everybody, you want to have reasonable expectations of what to expect. And if the setbacks can switch back and forth, depending on who's looking at it. It also kind of seems funny to me that the setbacks, I understand that setbacks for commercial tend to be smaller, but that they're directly abutting residential, that you'd be able to put a commercial use closer to the lot line than a residential use, kind of seems opposite of what we usually do to me. So I'll have to look at it more closely, but happy to do so.
Yeah, and again, the B3 side setbacks are 5 feet. So I mean, if they start, as you say, started making decisions depending on who's in the chair at the time, you could end up with houses 10 feet apart, and that's, to me, that's a problem with privacy. It's a fire hazard. It destroys the neighborhood. Multiple considerations there. And when you do have a business next to a residential area, I think in the zoning law, I think there's something about screening requirements.
There is.
So how would you deal with that if you had 5 feet from a residence? Well, how would you implement some kind of screening requirement?
Yes.
Needs-
Kevin, did you have your hand up?
Consistency is the word I was looking for earlier, that we want to make sure that different things are being enforced with consistency across the board.
Yeah. Well, thanks for hearing me out.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Is anyone else on the board?
I'm good.
Okay, Joe, we will definitely look into it and we'll get something on the agenda for a public hearing once we think about it a little bit.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Thanks for
Thanks,
letting me make the hybrid meeting.
Yep, thanks for the hybrid. Please, no one else show up to the office and hybrid it. All right, let's see. We're going to move on to the release of lots, Adelaide Way, lot 10 and 11. Greg?
Greg Gibbs is here.
Hi, Greg. How are you?
Good, Mike. How are you?
Good.
So yeah, basically I was requesting, we have 2 lots under purchase and sale, requesting lots 10 and 11. That'll complete the lots on the hill there, so we can finally get that stabilization finalized. And Mr. Brennan's cost to complete plus contingency currently is at 216,000. I've so far contributed 43,000 into CERDI and was looking to contribute 43,000 per lot, so another 86,000 tonight or upon approval. So
Okay, thank you. Greg, do you mind?
So we have a revised estimate, and that's where Greg is getting those numbers from Pat Brennan. So we're going to need 216,196 and 20 cents to complete the road in case something happens to Greg. Currently, we're holding 43,000. So when Greg came in with the request, I made it clear to him that we needed to start making sure that as we released lots, each of those lots covered its share of what we would need in order to get the road finished.
Okay, you're comfortable with doing it that way, Greg?
This is not how we usually do it. We've gone down this road. At least this way we know we're covered for these 2 lots. He still has 2 more lots, plus lot 1 that we're holding because it needs a sewer connection or some type of other nitrogen loading abatement.
Okay, so he's giving just his equal portion out of those 4 lots.
I'm sorry, what?
He's giving his equal portion out of those 4 lots for it.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the board at all? Seems okay with me. All right, no one from the board. Anyone from the public here on this one?
Yeah, Mike Viviano. It's Mike Egan from 8 Adelaide Way.
Hi, Mike.
And I would just like to say hi to all the members of the board. I would just encourage the members of the board to please try to release these 2 lots for Greg. Anything you guys can do to fast track the completion of this development would be greatly appreciated. I've been here for 7 years and it's been a roller coaster to say the least. But I think a few of the other neighbors are on the website tonight too, and I think they'll agree that anything you guys can do to fast track the completion of this would be tremendously appreciated. So,
Well, it sounds like he's got 2 under agreement, so that's halfway home.
Yeah, I do have just 2 questions, and I don't know if anybody has the answer to this. At one point, I was told that there were going to be trees lined up from the entrance all the way up the hill, and then there were going to be trees dividing my lot between my lot and the drainage lot. I was just wondering, is that still going to happen? And if so, when?
Greg's going to take a look at the plan.
So
Yeah.
that, sorry, Mr. Viviano, it's Greg Gibbs.
Go ahead, Greg Gibbs.
That is correct. There should be 27 arborvitaes dividing Mr. Egan's property and the drainage easement, and then also another 45 shade trees that go along the street all the way from the beginning all the way up to the cul-de-sac. Currently, I forget the number of maples I have on top of the wall, and then I have the 10 trees done up at the top of the cul-de-sac, but there's 45 more that need to be installed. So,
let's see. Mike Egan, does that answer your question?
Yeah. I was just wondering a date of when they were going in though, too.
Have you thought about that, Greg, at all?
Looking to do it sooner than later. The release of these lots, if possible, will, help free up some funds so that I can start moving things along. So,
All right, well, and again, so I'm all for releasing those 2 lots then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Greg, were you looking up something else or is it all set now?
No, I looked at the landscaping plan and it does show the trees and the buffer evergreen trees along the drainage basin.
Okay. Well, looks like we can go ahead and move this forward. Any other questions from the board? I don't see anybody in the public with their hands up. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to make a motion that we release lots 10 and 11 on Adelaide Way. Is there a second?
Second. Do we have to make that pending receipt?
Yes,
Pending receipt of the funds from Greg Gibbs.
$86,000.
Yep. Go ahead, Katie.
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick.
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Kevin.
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. All right, thank you, Greg.
thank you.
All right, we're moving on to the continued public hearing for Jedediah's Path. I'm going to make a motion that we reopen the continued public hearing for Jedediah's Path and waive the reading of the notice. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick?
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Kevin?
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. So we are going to go to the applicant for their presentation on what they have come up with since the last meeting. And then we'll go to the review engineer and Greg, and then we'll get to the public in a little bit. So you will be heard. Kevin Grady, I'll let you go.
Kevin,
Thanks,
did
Mike.
I make you the co-host? Is that the right one?
I don't.
Keep bouncing around on the list here.
Yeah, sorry. I can't see where that is. But if it means I can share a screen, then
Yep.
I can do that.
Yep, you should be able to share the screen.
All right. Thanks, Mike. I'm also here with Jeff DeLisi, the attorney for Mr. Paris, and I think he was going to open up the hearing.
Okay, Jeff?
Yeah,
go
just yeah, great. Just a brief introduction. I'm going to bounce back to Kevin. Our last meeting was May 9th. At that meeting, we explained that the subdivision approval, which initially occurred in the 1990s, approved the subdivision with a 40-foot wide reservation parcel, which extends off the existing cul-de-sac to land behind the subdivision. Since the last hearing, a few things have occurred. Karen has circulated a town response letter, which responded to issues and concerns articulated by the neighbors shortly before the last hearing. Kevin supplemented his plan set and also provided a letter, which has been reviewed by the town's consulting engineer, who I know is on the call tonight, but he did issue a letter indicating that his comments were satisfactorily responded to. Just a reminder, the existing roadway is 26 feet wide as a paved surface with 2 6-inch granite curbs and 2 4-foot wide sidewalks with no grass strip. The town's cul-de-sac specifications require a 40-foot wide layout with a 20-foot paved surface and 2 10-feet clearances on either side. That's for the cul-de-sac. Our plan meets that specification. Kevin's going to go over his plans that he has revised. He's prepared a maximum compliance plan, which was what we filed with our application. And we did not receive what we thought was a very clear direction from the board as to which direction it would like to go in. So we provided a few alternative plans. We expect the board might want to discuss those this evening. So I'll let Kevin go through it all.
Okay, Kevin?
Thanks, Jeff. So as Attorney DeLisi indicated, we prepared responses to abutter comments, and board discussions. We revised the plan to go along with the response letter. But the macro changes to the plan basically are that we proposed a maximum compliance plan, which we also did initially, but we refined that to eliminate a few additional waiver requests. So the maximum compliance plan proposes a tapered road. Just zoom in here. The existing way is 26 feet, as Attorney DeLisi indicated. The typical roadway section required under the subdivision control law is a 20-foot wide way. So what we did is a tapered section to the reservation strip. We tapered it from 26 feet to 20. And then we have a 20-foot wide road to a standard cul-de-sac. We also added our previous submittal only had one sidewalk proposed. We didn't really think it was necessary to have two sidewalks to get to the two lots we're proposing in our initial submittal, but what we want to do is maximum compliance here. So we added the other sidewalk. We also requested waivers from granite curbs on radiuses that are greater than 60 feet. In our initial submittal, we eliminated that waiver request and we're proposing granite on the radiuses and also in the cul-de-sac and also behind any catch basins, which is your standard requirement. I think at this point, the only waiver we're requesting on this scenario is the roadway right-of-way width. The reservation strip was only 40.62 feet wide. The planning board requirement is 46 feet wide. We don't own the 46 feet width, therefore we need a waiver. The planning board, when they approved the reservation strip at that time, approved a 40-foot wide reservation that allowed, for future access. So this is our maximum compliance plan. We also heard from the abutters and what their concerns were with removing the existing cul-de-sac. It sounds like their preference would be to retain the existing cul-de-sac. So we prepared an option number 2 that we retain the cul-de-sac, excuse me for this piece here, that should have been frozen on this plan, but in general, what we wanted to show is that here's an option for the planning board to consider is that we retain this cul-de-sac, we put radiuses of granite off of this cul-de-sac, and then we build an additional one. We obviously would need waivers for that because the regulations require that you eliminate the existing cul-de-sac if you're going to extend the road. The abutters indicated that they would prefer to retain the cul-de-sac, so we wanted to put that option before the board for consideration. The roadway here is 20 feet wide. We can do 2 sidewalks. This is the standard typical roadway section. We wanted to propose a third option for the board to consider. This is all on sheet 13. It's the last sheet. Again, retaining the cul-de-sac and, in response to the abutters, we're proposing a right-of-way full bulb cul-de-sac property line. But what we're looking to do is to do a hammerhead turnaround that a fire engine could pull down, back in, and exit. The thought process behind it is that we're keeping the cul-de-sac in its current state as much as possible. So when you come down the roadway, this roadway looks more like a drive and another driveway than an extension of the road. So we understand the planning board has regulations and they want to maximize the compliance. So that's what we really submitted. But we never really got around to talking to what are the potential options. That could work for obviously the applicant, but also the abutters and also the town to provide, safe and adequate access and utilities and emergency vehicle access. That's the meat of, I believe, where we are tonight in our discussion with the planning board. We did provide an extensive response to the abutter letter. The assistant town planner, Karen, did a response. We agreed with pretty much all of her responses. We added a couple of minor items. We can get to those if specific questions about those responses are brought up, but I guess I'd like to leave it there for now.
So thank you, Kevin. And I appreciate the alternative plans because I think the neighbors appreciate that as well. I don't want to speak for them, and we will get to their opinions in a few. I think we need to focus on one plan, or at least try to narrow it down which one the board wants to lean toward. So maybe after we hear some of the abutters about the alternative plans, that would help sway the board into which one we're looking to go with. Since we have three, one real plan and two alternatives in front of us.
Sounds good.
Greg, do you before we get to too much here, what is the issue with doing a double cul-de-sac, except for our regulations say get rid of the old cul-de-sac? Can you tell me the implications I might be not thinking of by allowing that to happen?
First off is the former fire department chief was concerned with having cul-de-sacs in the middle of the roadway with emergency vehicles trying to go through, especially if they're landscaped where you visually can't see what's coming around the other side of the cul-de-sac. Second, on this case, this is a distance of about 225 to 230 feet. You would have two cul-de-sacs within 200 feet. It does not make a lot of sense. And it's quite clear in the regulations that it was, when you're extending roads, you remove the former cul-de-sac and you extend the cul-de-sac to the end. So all residents, future delivery trucks, future service vehicles, fire, police, etc., have the ability to turn around on the cul-de-sac versus a hammerhead or something else.
So that would be in the hammerhead plan, but in this plan, they would continue around the cul-de-sac and then down to the next cul-de-sac if needed be to get down to those two houses.
Yes, and
Okay.
The planning board did this twice before when I was on the planning board years ago.
Yep.
And we were told, don't do it again. Safety vehicles don't like having to slow down. We have had a second conversation with the fire chief, and his comments were, if this first cul-de-sac were to remain, he would like the landscaped island removed and paved over so he could have a staging area, especially if the road narrowed down. His preference is to have the road continue at the 26 feet wide with the upright granite curbs through what is the now cul-de-sac. DPW, I have talked to the engineer, Charlie Swanson, because Rod is not available. He won't be back until tomorrow. He was also in favor of keeping the 26-foot wide roadway as originally approved through the existing cul-de-sac would be removed and we would come down to the lower button, and that's where the sidewalks would stop, etc.
Okay, I think that answers
Kevin, I need you to stop sharing for the moment, I think. so I can
Sure.
share.
Let me see. I think you got it. Hold on.
I think I am.
I think you have it.
Okay, so this is the original type C, which was a 40-foot layout with a 26-foot wide road.
I think you're on the wrong screen, Greg.
Up.
Yeah, we just see a home screen right now.
Okay. Sharing. Share screen. Share. What are you seeing now?
Home screen still.
Still the same.
Just your desktop.
All right, well, then I'll move it into the desktop.
There you go.
There we go.
So you can see the original 40-foot layout. This is what Jedediah's path was originally approved at. This is what the fire chief and the DPW engineer both, as of today, have recommended to me that we follow. And that way we're not getting into a narrowing down of the road. There is no confusion for snow plows or emergency vehicles or anything. So that's what they're talking about. Since that plan was approved, this is what we did with type C. We realized that 40-foot right of way, we could not fit in street trees, et cetera. So we widened the right of way and we narrowed the road. And we used Cape Cod berm because we have the 6-foot grass strips in between before you get to the sidewalks. And that's where street trees, et cetera, would go in. So that's what the change on the type C road is and where we're into a situation. If we do anything else but the original type C 1988 version, we're getting into modifications of the roadway and waivers.
Can I speak to your question a bit too, Mike? Sorry to.
Go ahead, Kevin.
In the current configuration, I have not heard that there's any issues with emergency vehicle access. And I think you find that in, larger developments, they put these roundabout cul-de-sacs in as traffic calming. They're not necessarily an impediment to emergency vehicles. So I don't see that as being a major issue for emergency access.
Kevin, that's exactly why we did it the first 2 times up in the Arrowhead area with the Cullen subdivisions. We thought it would be traffic calming, but you also had a much longer roadway. So you had cars zipping along and they were wider roads. We've gone down to narrower roads to also try to slow down traffic.
And also, yes, that's a traffic calming. It also reduces runoff.
Yep.
And so fire department, now wants 26 feet, and I'm not sure how long the typical roadway section's been 20 feet, but are you having issues with 20-foot wide roadways for emergency vehicles? And I guess, it's kind of a pointed question, but I've been guessing on what I'm designing here for months. And I just want to make sure we are providing, again, the best scenario for the town, the abutters, and my client.
Yeah, we're going to try to narrow that down tonight. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mike, it looks like the fire chief's on the meeting if he wants to weigh in.
That would be terrific. Is the fire chief here?
I am on. How are you?
Oh, good, Jeff. How are you?
Just give me 1 second here with my phone.
Sure, not a problem.
I'm doing a million things. Anyways,
can I
answer that question?
Yeah, can I just say
in my
one thing?
31-year history, it's the consistency that I've always looked for. 26-foot street, our ladder truck. It's a modern ladder truck. It's only a couple years old. Much different than, the older equipment. In order to properly utilize the ladder truck, it has outriggers. Outriggers, you've seen them on TV, and maybe you've seen them up close. The outriggers stabilize the truck so that we can deploy the 100+ foot ladder so that the truck itself doesn't fall over. With the outriggers deployed, in the street, the truck is parked. It's 11, you have 11 foot, that's the width of that truck, Now, the ladder truck typically gets utilized in all building fires, so building fire responses, chimney fires, anything along those lines. The engine itself, the average width of our modern fire engines and our newest engine is 8 feet. Okay, so that was the reasoning behind it, because there just isn't a lot of room if you open a compartment door or anything along those lines, which they are typically open. There isn't a lot of room for us to get around. And it was the consistency. Every fire chief, I'm going to tell you right now, okay, wants a wider road. All right, because the equipment's getting larger, but by the day. And this is something that I think about on a regular basis. And I agree with what Greg said about the traffic calming measures. And it's a little different in this neighborhood. But that's my opinion on this. Okay.
So Jeff, I appreciate that, and that I think most of us are going to listen to your guidance because you're the one that knows these machines. One question I have for you is the existing cul-de-sac, because I believe for the neighbors, leaving that existing cul-de-sac there is very important to them to keep the neighborhood the way it is. Can you just tell us your opinion on keeping the existing cul-de-sac, please?
And when I did speak to the neighbors, and I'm going to say the same thing that I've said to Greg, I'm all about consistency. I like the width of the roadway consistent throughout. Okay. And to me, the cul-de-sac, that isn't a huge issue to me, as long as I can I can move my trucks up and down that street. I can move them through, okay, and get to the next cul-de-sac of those two homes at the end of the road with no impediment.
Okay. So you believe it's okay, in your opinion, to leave the first one, travel around it, and get down to the second one without issue?
That's where it gets difficult for me. That's where it gets difficult. And, that's something that I would have a tough time with, just because we're talking about two cul-de-sacs, which is kind of unusual to begin with. But for me, when we talked about this earlier, I talked to Greg. I believe one of the things we discussed was it would just create more confusion if we had two roundabout cul-de-sacs in one development. That could create problems. And I know it would probably create problems for DPW if you eliminated the island in the middle. Okay, so I could certainly offer some type of a compromise to that. I'd have to go back up to the site and take a look at it again with my apparatus, and we could go from there.
Okay, so you really don't have an answer till you get to take a ride up there?
Yeah, I would want to go up there and take another look.
Okay, that's fine. I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. Any
Not a
questions
problem.
from other board members? Okay,
No.
seeing none, thank you for your time. All right, I'm not sure if that moves me along to narrowing down a plan, does it? Let's see. Greg, do you have anything you want to say right now?
The only thing I would add on the removal of the existing cul-de-sac is that it would allow the sidewalks to be continuous to the end of the new street or the beginning of the cul-de-sac bubble. Right now, there is no sidewalks around the cul-de-sac. Also, the planning board in their rules and regs, if it was an off-centered cul-de-sac, it could have remained, because the fact that it was a center line, what I'd call a center line cul-de-sac, is part of the problem. And if you look at the landscaping that they have done in the cul-de-sac, which the residents are concerned about, it will make it difficult for emergency vehicles driving down that road to see what's coming in the opposite direction, going around that first cul-de-sac if it was to remain.
Okay, so the potential removal of the landscaping and paving the middle is a possible option to avoid that?
Which is something that the fire chief and I had talked about.
Okay. And until that's the proposal, the fire chief doesn't have an opinion on it yet. And that's fine. Other members of the board, do you have any questions right now before we move on?
Yeah, I just, one thing to, I guess, clarify. So if the existing cul-de-sac remained, regardless of the inner portion landscaped or not, the sidewalks would need to be added around the perimeter of the existing cul-de-sac to make it to the new road extension, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Any other board members right now?
No, Nick asked my question.
Okay. Katie?
With the hammerhead proposal, my concern with that is where's the frontage? Does that generate enough frontage for the proposed lots?
Kevin?
Sure. So we would have a right of way. The same right of way would be proposed. So on the lotting plan, it would still look like a bulb cul-de-sac, but we would, instead of paving a round cul-de-sac, we would pave a hammerhead within that bulb. Does that make sense? I don't have the
Yeah, but I
screen
think
share.
you can share. You can share.
Okay, I can
still.
share again. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Rick.
Yep.
So in this scenario, this outer line would be the property line. So that part would not change. The frontage you would attain along the bulb for both of these. And you would just pave the red lines for the hammerhead. So it would be the exact same. So these are the lot lines for the existing lots around the perimeter, the dark heavy line there. This is the lot line for this lot, and the dark heavy line is the lot line for that lot. Can you see that?
I can see it. Yeah.
Okay.
I have
That's the
concerns
frontage.
about this as a precedent setting concern that, we're talking about building the road because we need to build the road to have the frontage. And I have concerns about this, but I'll continue listening for now.
Greg Guimond, does that legally give them frontage if it's unpaved frontage, the way they want that hammerhead done?
It's paved.
No, well, the hammerhead's paved.
Yeah,
But you're trying to use the bulb area as your frontage, right?
Like the right of way versus
Yeah,
the paved
so I'm just
area.
asking Greg, does that count?
One of the lots clearly would have pavement. The other one, we'd have to check the radiuses and stuff. It looks like it could potentially have enough. But on the hammerhead in particular is where, when I was having a discussion with both Charlie and the fire chief that's where he definitely wanted the cul-de-sac paved without a landscaping area, because he wanted a staging area for his equipment, because the road is narrow and you have a hammerhead down at the end. So you would have vehicles turning around in that area and coming back and forth. So that was one of the reasons why we were not recommending the hammerhead proposal.
Okay. So I don't want to put words in the fire chief's mouth from your meeting that I wasn't at, but if they paved the entire new cul-de-sac, the new one, the lower one, then he wasn't necessarily looking to have the landscaping removed out of the middle of the first one?
No, the opposite.
Oh, okay. Explain
If
that.
you
Sorry.
went with the hammerhead.
Well, I was
particular-
forgetting about the hammerhead.
Right, okay, so you're forgetting about the hammerhead.
Yep. Just dealing with the one that's on the screen.
Again, it was the narrowing of the road, which is why he was looking for a potential staging area in the existing cul-de-sac.
Okay, so he would still want that.
Which is why he was recommending the wider road, and then he had less concern with having to have a staging area. Visibility still may be a concern.
And Kevin, you have the ability to match the 26-foot width of pavement of the existing road on the reservation parcel, correct?
Correct.
And still have 2 sidewalks and 2 granite curbs?
Correct.
Okay.
Just smaller than what we require now.
No bigger.
No.
There'd be no grass strip.
Oh, there'd be no grass strip.
Right.
And
Currently,
no street
Jedediah
trees.
is. Well, we might be able to fit street trees on the outside. It's tight. there's also existing trees in here. Let me
So
zoom
Kevin,
in
you
a
get
bit.
about 2.5 feet once you get past the sidewalk left, which you're not going to want a street tree within that 2.5 feet because the roots are going to damage both the sidewalk and the street tree.
Yeah, it's tight.
Which is why we were on our side, we were not envisioning in that section in between that 200 some odd feet. You know, if you went with that full 26 with the granite upright curbs and the 2 sidewalks, that we were not looking for street trees in that particular area because it wouldn't fit without some type of off-road easements with property owners.
And we don't already have street trees on Jedediah's path. It's just sidewalks, right?
Right, there's no grass strip. The sidewalk is right up against the granite curbing.
So
So
for
this is
sake of consistency, 26 feet wide, 2 granite curbs, 2 sidewalks looks the exact same as what is there now.
Correct, and there are existing trees. Yes, it's not within the reservation strip, but there's a 22-inch pine tree, the 16-inch deciduous tree, and this is wooded. We located that as tree line, so that's this undisturbed woodland in here. So as far as vegetation goes, I think it would still look fine. It just wouldn't be street trees.
Okay. So I think at this point, and I'm going to go to the rest of the board in a minute, what I've been leaning toward is, you know, pending the fire department and pending what the neighbors are about to say, because I do want to hear from them. They are the ones really affected in this. I'm leaning toward the 2 cul-de-sacs, a 26-foot road, because that's what the fire chief wants, and then probably no additional trees because it is wooded and we already have some existing trees there. And I think that's the best possible scenario I can think of, being one member. And I think we can hear from the other board members right now, and then we can go to the public and see what their thoughts are. Does anyone else have one of the plans that they would lean toward going with? Nick?
I'll at least say I think we should. I'm leaning away from the hammerhead.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with Katie's comments on that. So, yeah.
Okay. So if the hammerhead's out, and I think the hammerhead isn't going to make the fire department very happy, and I think that's a difficult one, then Nick, which one would you lean toward? Would you lean toward removing the first cul-de-sac or leaving the first cul-de-sac?
I'm a little split right now, to be honest.
That's fine. I'm just trying to figure out what the board, if we can lean one way or another, we could hear the neighbors and move on.
I think part of the split is depending on what the preferences are on the existing cul-de-sac with the landscape there or not.
Yeah, it sounds like the landscape strip may have to go, or I mean, the trees are going to have to go, and there's already a lot of trees down that area. Katie?
So, yeah, I'm leaning towards shifting the cul-de-sac, you know, and having, I feel like we need names for this, like A, B, C.
I think we get rid of C, the hammerhead.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the hammerhead
doesn't seem to fit very well.
Doesn't do it for me. But the existing cul-de-sac, when I took a ride up there and was really looking around at it, I do have concerns about the landscaping within the cul-de-sac. When the road continuing, I worry about visibility. Like right now, there's, you know, the trees and the plantings, at least somebody is turning in a very tight radius, so they really can't be moving that quickly. But if there's, you know, 200 more feet beyond there, and I think you could see another car, but I worry, especially as much as the neighborhood has talked about kids riding bikes and everything, I worry about there being blind spots for someone to come out from behind an area. and not being seen in a clear sight line. So that's a concern for me, but I'm continuing to listen.
So do you have an opinion on removing the first one or keeping the first one?
I'd be right now, I'm in favor of removing it. I think that it would be cleaner. There'd be more green space, and I think it would make it clearer.
Okay, thank you. Kevin?
What's up, Mike? I'm still like to listen to the public, but I the first cul-de-sac, I'm not sure if we leave it. I don't really, I'm kind of ambivalent right now. I'm just trying to wait and listen to see what goes on. I can see to leave it. I do understand what Katie's saying about the sight line, so that could be an issue.
Okay. All right. So I think we've come to the point we can open it up to the public. We've had a lot of discussion, and we'd like to hear your opinions on some of the plans here. The only thing I would say, if you're in favor for it or against it, and if it's a point that hasn't been brought up, feel free to bring up a new point. If we've already heard for, negative because you don't want the cul-de-sac removed, if we could keep those ones a little quicker than longer, that would be great. So if you put your hand up, looks like Anna is first. I will call you if you just give us her name and address, and we can hear you out there.
Hi, Mike. Thank you. My name is Anna Iafredo. I'm in a butter at 155 Jedediah's Path. So my first concern here is that Karen Horan informed us, as we heard also from the Board of Public Works, that the Board of Public Works voted in favor of maintaining the existing cul-de-sac as it stands. And I think we would like to understand why that hasn't been addressed.
Greg, do we have a memo from DPW on that?
It was the board that voted on it the same night that our hearing took place.
Yeah.
No, we do not have an official correspondence from the Board of Public Works. And in the past, we have never received correspondence on a subdivision from the Board of Public Works. Comments have always come from the engineering staff.
Okay, so the engineering staff what were they in favor of?
Removal of the cul-de-sac as in the rules and regs, and have a continuous sidewalk and street down to the new cul-de-sac bubble.
Okay. Anna, give me one moment. I see Bob Shaughnessy. Bob is on the DPW, and you're on the board, Bob?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, the Board of Public Works voted, Dave Carey and myself and John Kuzak voted to keep the existing cul-de-sac. And we directed the superintendent to notify the planning board. I talked to the superintendent before this meeting, and he said that we actually did send something to the planning board.
Okay, well, I believe you, and maybe it's just lost communication somewhere, but I appreciate you coming to the meeting and letting us know what you guys had an opinion of, and that's very helpful. Thank you.
Mike, may I continue?
Yep, Anna, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Karen Horn did tell us in an email that, in fact, the Board of Public Works had notified someone that they understood that they voted to keep the cul-de-sac intact. So there's a little confusion there. So
Mike, there is no confusion. We received a phone call from Rod Procaccino, who told us that the Board of Public Works voted to recommend that the cul-de-sac remain.
Okay, I think we.
So how do we handle that now? How is that moving
we've heard from Anna. We've heard from Bob Shaughnessy, and we all know Bob, and we believe what that vote is. So the Board of Public Works would like that to stay. It's not their choice if it stays or not. It's ours.
I understand.
Yep. But we are all under the firm understanding that they are in favor of keeping it.
So you'll consider that then, is my question.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much. So also, just to point out, I appreciate Mr. Grady changing the plans to include other options, because the cul-de-sac is really important to our entire neighborhood. And we're talking from the residents at the base of both roads, Oakman Way and Jedediah, is on toward the cul-de-sac. And we've signed a petition to portray that. But just to back up a little bit, we have, and we appreciate the options, we really do. But we talked to the applicant back in January. The applicant had reached out to us and he discussed different plans that they would like to see, a 2-lot plan, a 3-lot plan. At the time, he was looking to perhaps purchase a portion of our parcel so he could put in 3 lots. And it went a little bit back and forth. This is before it was even presented to the planning board. He said he was a not-for-profit developer and that he was looking just to build a home for his family and I guess a few of the friends at the time. So seeing that we weren't willing to give up parcel of our land, they went with a 2 plan. And at the time when we reviewed that, we did make it clear that we did not want to lose our cul-de-sac and have the road reconstructed for a myriad of reasons, which I know we've expressed. So I'm glad that finally, after all those months, we have some options to look at, and I hope that the board considers those options. And I know what the fire chief is saying, but with a BPW looking to maintain our cul-de-sac, it's really important to us that we keep that because it creates other issues for the abutters and others that I know we can't discuss now with the planning board, but I hope that others won't lose sight of the fact that it does impact the 2 abutters' homes tremendously when you change the frontage that much. So, and we did address that, and I'm hoping that still people do look at our comments and concerns because we did receive the actual engineering plans from Grady Consulting on Wednesday of this past week. And Greg and Karen were kind enough to give us until Thursday to submit our rebuttal, but that honestly didn't give us any time to react as we should have. And we would have liked to have perhaps run this by our own engineering consultant, and we weren't given the opportunity to do so. So we would really like, before everyone makes final decisions, to have the opportunity to have that looked at and have our other questions answered. We wouldn't want to belabor all of those questions, and they are different. They're just unanswered questions from last time or new concerns that have come up. The other thing is, during the first hearing, it was said that the land was always meant for development. And there's some confusion here, and he didn't really expound upon that. But one of our neighbors, Chris White, and my husband, Frank, went in and met with Greg, and Greg shared with him a letter that Lawrence Stratton, that owns 1024 Forest, shared with the planning board back in the day, 1995. And that was almost a type of handshake that they wouldn't develop, that they would not landlock them, that the town would not landlock them, so that he could develop the land currently under agreement with the applicant for his children. Well, that didn't transpire, but needless to say, that we want to understand if that was approved as a permanent extension, because we can't find that it was. And also, we've since learned that that land is owned, that access point land is owned by James Bristol, and that's also currently under agreement with the applicant, Mr. Bristol. So we don't know how Mr. Stratton could have had an agreement back in the day. I believe he said it was Matt Curry, with Matt Curry, that that land would become an extension for them. If A, it wasn't approved, and B, they don't own, the town doesn't own that individual parcel. They own from the fire hydrant at that access point forward to the road, but not the actual parcel that leads down to the drainage easement and to the lots of land under discussion.
So Anna, on this one particular issue you bring up right now, this is a entirely new application and with new owners or new to be owners, and it's their right to come in and have this process play out. So anything that happened back in 1985 or whatever date you gave us there, I don't believe has anything to do with right now. This is a completely new application.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying that it was brought to our attention by the attorney, the applicant's attorney, during the last hearing. He made a point that that land was always meant for development, and it was never expounded upon. And then Greg shared with us that letter. So it became a new piece of information that we are looking to address.
I don't think it would sway anyone either way, yes or no, in this subdivision about something that happened back in 1985, of a handshake agreement or whatever that was. So
I would hope not, because that's what we're trying to explain right now. We would hope not, because that's what was brought to us twice. They weren't points that we mentioned. It was a point that Mr. Paris's attorney mentioned and that Greg gave to Frank for consideration. And that's why we'd like to clarify that and have it on record that that shouldn't be. I'd like to allow Maureen to speak now. Go ahead, Maureen.
No, I don't know who Maureen is.
Oh,
so-
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Maureen. I'm done, hon.
So who was next to have their hand up?
Mike.
Greg is. Greg Guimond.
Sorry, Greg.
All right. So the right-of-way or reserve was put on the plans. That's what was done by the board. It is correct. Mr. Bristol owned it, and at this point, I believe still owns it, but there is a purchase and sales.
Correct.
So there was what Mr. Stratton was talking about was he was concerned because the planning board had put a 600-foot limit on cul-de-sacs. And that's what he was concerned that he was then being cut off from.
Okay.
So the roadway reservation was put on the plans based on discussions during the public hearings. There is no secret handshake or anything because it was put on the plans as a roadway reservation, specifically following the requirements of the rules and regulations.
Interesting. It's amazing they wouldn't have put an access road there instead of putting
It
the
is
curb.
for an access road, but it was not meant to be a driveway or anything. It was the Stratton's second parcel, which I've tried to explain in that letter back to you, is a separate lot.
It is now.
Not 1024.
It is now.
It was merged by the assessors without their permission, and it was not done with the registry of deeds. So it was a separate lot. That was an unsubdivided, cut off piece of land. The planning board back then was following its own rules and regulations and provided a roadway reservation to that parcel so it could be subdivided in the future.
I understand. It's a shame that they were still not considering this as a Forest Street subdivision. But I just want to say that I disapprove of the project based on things that we've shared, and we hope you consider all the other information we shared. Thank you. Of
Okay, thank you, Anna. Anna, can I ask you one question?
course.
Do you have a preference on removing the cul-de-sac or keeping the cul-de-sac?
We would like to keep our existing cul-de-sac with the landscaping in the middle. We take a lot of pride in that. And we submitted a photograph, as a matter of fact, so you can all see what you would vote against if you would like to look at it.
So I've been up there. I know Katie's been up there, and we did all get that email earlier today. So thank you. All right, who has their hand up next? Looks like John. I'm sorry to call you John. I don't
That's
think your name's
okay.
John.
This is John's wife, Maureen Vizina, and I live at 156 Jedediah's Path. And my questions to the board have to do with the drainage easement that's on our land. Right now, it appears that there needs to be work done on the drainage system. And there are some elaborate drawings, and I don't pretend to know exactly how to read the drawings, but I'd like to know if the board would determine if there's digging that's slated to happen on our land, which is the 20-foot stretch that goes from the Bristol parcel down to the drainage lot.
You want to know if there's going to be digging on that 20-foot section?
Are there modifications or gradation differences, drainage manhole elevation changes, anything along those lines that for the parts that are right on our property?
Yeah, Kevin will have to answer that. Kevin, can you answer what's going on over there, please? You're muted. Kevin, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Can I share again real quick? So the existing drainage base is Jedediah's Path, cul-de-sac, reservation strip. This portion of the drainage system is located within an easement on 156 Jedediah's Path. The town retains an easement to access and maintain the piping in there, drainage easement. And then the town owns the land that the drainage basin is within. We're not proposing any changes to the piping within the easement, or actually to this point, what we are proposing to do is modify the outlet control structure slightly. It's a minor modification to the existing structure. And in discussions with your peer review engineer, we have agreed in our last letter to sod the bottom of the basin. We're basically going to clean out any sediment in there and we're going to sod it. So the only work that would be done on this property would be to access. And we also propose to put back new crushed stone access.
Kevin, there's crushed stone there now.
Is there digging or modifying of the drainage pipe on my land?
I believe you said no.
Yeah, correct.
The answer is no.
Correct.
So the reason that the work has to be done to the drainage lot is because the capacity of the rainfall introduced by the extended street. Correct?
Correct.
So that kind of increases the burden on the existing piping.
We've analyzed the peak rates and the sizes of the piping, and it's been peer reviewed that the piping has sufficient capacity.
But so I'm trying to understand my rights as an easement servient estate. And what I have come to understand is the easement is to be used exactly as it was defined. And because it's being, the drainage capacity is being extended to additional land owners, that goes beyond the existing easement definition, which I believe is not legal.
That's a legal question I couldn't answer. Greg, have you ever run into that question? Not that you're an attorney, Greg. That might be a question we can bring up to town council and ask them.
You also have the applicant's attorney present. I am not a lawyer, so I'm not going to go there.
Well, I would listen briefly to the applicant's attorney. Are you still on here?
Yeah, I am. Hi.
What is your understanding of that?
I don't think that putting more water into the existing pipes would be what we call a overburdening of the easement or overloading of the easement. So I disagree with Maureen's statement that somehow it would be illegal.
Jeff, did you read the easement?
Have I read the easement?
Yes.
No, it's just existing on a plan.
Okay, so
I believe I haven't seen it. I haven't looked at the title on that issue.
Being that you might be a little one-sided on this issue, I think we have to ask town council.
Sure. Yep.
I think he's referring to typical language of a drainage easement.
That's fine, but he hasn't read this particular one.
To the extent it exists.
Sure. And I believe one exists. I think she has a very valid question if it's legal or not to do that on this easement. Well, the one thing about the easement, not that I'm an attorney, I'm not trying to play one, is the town owns what they are doing. They're not touching anything within your easement. Isn't that existing drainage lot owned by the town?
It is.
So if they don't touch anything in your property, not that I'm an attorney, and we're going to ask town council, I think they can.
That was my point with the overloading or overburdening.
Yeah.
And I note it goes over Mr. Bristol's reservation parcel as well.
Yeah. Is there an easement, a drainage easement on the Bristol parcel?
There would have to be for that pipe to be there. And I believe
not a deeded piece of property.
I believe it appears on the subdivision plan. So town council should be able to answer that question.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Yep, thank you. It's a great question.
I mean, the case law on it would indicate that an injunction could actually be put in place if it goes beyond the existing definition of the easement.
Well, the only thing I would
No, Jeff,
add,
Jeff, we're not going to argue this right now because we have an attorney on one side of this and then we have a homeowner on the other side. And I'm only going to listen or believe our town council. That's the only one that would be impartial here. So.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Greg, can you put that into email to town council?
Yep.
Great, thank you. I believe you were all done, John? Okay, thank you. Was there somebody else with their hand up? Let's
Harold
see,
Rowan West.
hang on, I saw Dennis's hand. Dennis, name and address?
Hi, Dennis Vetrano. I'm my wife here. Christine is with me. 48 Jedediah's Path. And we've been homeowners and purchased the land from Bristol Corporation from the onset. So we've been here while the development. I'm sorry.
Whoever Joanna is, can you please mute?
Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, Dennis.
Thank you. So we want to thank the planning board for listening to our concerns and first and foremost, would like to say we would prefer the cul-de-sac to remain. And the site issue with the heavy equipment or fire equipment is not an issue because the vegetation is low. Those trucks sit up very high and there is nothing that would block the height of where those trucks sit. So I just want to make that clear.
Well, with that being said, I'm going to listen to the advice of the fire chief.
Absolutely. I would absolutely recommend, but I'm just telling you that the vegetation is not high. You know, there's multiple red flags here of which I read from Grady Engineering that has not been addressed is why the septic system is out of zone 2 is being moved into zone 1. Issues, multiple issues with the roadway and how it fits, etc. Going back to initially when this all started in February, that we had someone come in and start digging without calling DigSafe in the month of February, and a cease and desist was put. And that is a very concern to me in the year of 2022, that some engineering firm or some applicant feels it is okay to come in and dig without calling DigSafe, and a cease and desist was put. So that tells me something about the applicant or the engineering firm. There are multiple red flags here, and what I really would like is to recommend to the board that this application be disapproved. I think there's too many red flags, including the one that Maureen Vancina just brought up about adding the burden to the pipe. And again, would look forward to town council to research that as her right as a landowner to understand what the laws are regarding that. But the impact to this, to the abutters in the neighborhood is significant. And I just believe there are many red flags here that the planning board needs to look at and consider, and would hope that they would vote to recommend that the applicant be disapproved. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. So you brought up 2 things that you thought were red flags, and you keep saying many. Is there another one we're not hearing?
So we asked to receive the certified letter from Grady, which we did not receive, regarding the testing of the dump in the soil, and so we have not received that, and we have been unable to really get communication from the Board of Health, which I just don't understand why they're not releasing information to us regarding the perk test, and it is just so frustrating frustrating as taxpayers of this town and homeowners that we have.
Dennis, let me ask a question real quick just about that, because if you keep going on, it may not get answered. Kevin, are the test pit results that are on the plan?
Yes, they're on the plan.
Yeah, they're on the plan already, Dennis. The perk test results.
Okay.
So I don't think you need to contact the Board of Health when they're on the plan already.
All right, so I will retract that. And so what about the testing that was done regarding the soil testing and the dump?
Okay.
Kevin, was there testing done for the dump work? I don't think it's required.
It's not required, but at the request of the applicant and probably their bank, their investors, we hired an LSP to come out and look at the test holes that we did, and there was no evidence of any previous work on those lots.
Okay, is there any way to submit that to the board? That way you can get, if the neighbors want that, they can have it?
Well, I'm not sure. I can look into that, but I don't own that.
Okay.
My clarification, I think what Kevin just said is he's talking about the lot where the two houses are going on, not the dump.
I believe that's correct. Yes, we can't just go dig on someone else's land or test someone else's land. Yep. So Kevin, if that is, I understand that's beyond what you did, but if that's readily available and it could be submitted, then that would be great. Otherwise, it's not a requirement, and I can't require you submit it.
Okay, I will look into that.
Okay, Dennis.
Yep. So if you want to look back at the notes from last meeting, there was a statement regarding that. So we have an uncapped dump that's unmonitored on top of it, with no geological flow showing. And my concern is, and we all know in this country all too hard what happens with issues next to uncapped, unmonitored landfills, and would hate to see something happen years down the road because due diligence was not done.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Let's see. Dennis, I believe, are you all set? Is that it?
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to voice my opinions.
Great, thank you. Next resident, put your hand up, and first one I see, I'll call. Okay, Joanna, name and address, please.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Brian and Joanna Fleming, 100 Jedediah's Path in the neighborhood. Hi, you guys are doing, I know it's difficult to stay up late and do these things. We appreciate your work, and it's not easy. I'm just curious as to, I was just doing research after the last meeting of this. There was I looked up something on realtor.com about the history of the cul-de-sac. And there's an article that said, cul-de-sacs, one quote, one survey found that buyers are willing to pay up to 20% more for a home on a cul-de-sac, indicating that their preferences, they're willing to pay top dollar for peace and quiet. And I'll be happy to forward that to you. But my question really is just, the homes that are built around the cul-de-sac right now, I think have an intrinsic value of being on that cul-de-sac. And the idea of taking away that value of being on that cul-de-sac seems kind of strange to me. And it seems strange to me that no one has explored the opportunity. I mean, I saw the Hammerhead idea. My question is, there are 3 homes on Oakman Way that are on a very steep hill. That's number 29, 39, and 49 Oakman Way. They're on a steep hill, a private public road. And then there are 2 homes, 31 and 41 Jedediah's Path, that are also on a private road. And I'm curious as to why exceptions were made for those 5 homes to have private roads. And the insistence here is to forcibly remove a cul-de-sac and push it back to the new constructions. Because I feel like it seems like you're kind of taking value from people who have been there for a long time. And now you're going to have their homes in the marketplace going against new construction homes that'll be probably larger and not have 30-year-old roofs. And you're giving them that value of being on that cul-de-sac. And I think that's kind of taking from people who've been here for a very long time. And I think I'm curious as to why fire trucks are able to get to, again, 29, 39, and 49 Oakman and 31 and 41 Jedediah's, and they wouldn't be able to get to two homes off that cul-de-sac on a private road.
So to answer your question, I believe all of us on the board here are trying to give the neighbors the least possible interference.
Sure.
I myself am leaning toward leaving the cul-de-sac there.
And we appreciate that.
I am definitely going to take the advice pretty much directly from the fire chief for what he would like to see, because safety is first.
Yes, yes.
I'm not going to respond to the question I'm going to respond to it very briefly about other houses. We didn't approve those. You know, that was something else that was approved another time. And
yes, yep.
What happens on one project, everyone's always worried about setting precedents, but I never worry about that because I don't worry about what somebody else did. So I never have that worry as some people do, and that's fine. Beyond that,
Mike,
Greg?
Oakman is public. It was accepted at the same time Jedediah's Path was.
Oh, I'm
Not a
referring to
private way.
the private way off Oakman that goes to the three houses.
I don't think Oakman or whatever that is has anything to do with what we're dealing with here.
I think he's referring to a common driveway that accesses multiple houses.
Margie? Was it? I can't read that. You have to mute.
I have a question.
I need you to mute.
You need me to mute?
Yeah, because you're
For the
getting
moment.
feedback.
For the
No one can
moment.
hear anything. Greg, can you mute her, please? Thank you.
She muted herself.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mike, can I?
What do you want to address, Kevin?
Just
I don't
think
want to
he was
address
saying.
Oakman Way.
No, I think he wasn't saying Oakman Way is private. There's a few houses that have a common driveway off of Oakman Way. Is what he was saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Just so you
That's
know.
fine. It has nothing to do with this application. So,
Sure.
I can only call you Joanna because that's the only name I see.
That's okay. I'm
Brian.
Okay, Brian. So, did I answer your question on that part of it?
You did, yes. I mean, we have two children who go to Martinson Elementary, and one of them just got a new bike, and he likes riding around in the cul-de-sac. So we would like him to be able to continue riding in that cul-de-sac.
Totally understood.
Using his new bike. So thank you for your time and appreciate your work.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who has their hand up next? All right, the unmuter. Yes. Is it
Marie?
It's Marie.
It's Marie. Okay. It's Marie. Okay. Very small.
My name is Marie Mullen. We live at 53 and the question I have for this
Hang on,
whole
Marie, you
project
have a really, Marie, I'm sorry, but you have such a bad connection. I can hear myself
Okay.
talking. It's bouncing back.
So what can I do?
Well, that seemed to work.
Anyone who's not talking should be on mute.
Yeah, if anyone else is around you, make sure it's on mute. And then,
So are we good to go?
Does she have a cell phone on as well as her computer?
No, we
Okay.
just have the computer on.
okay, is everyone else muted, Greg? Maybe you can mute everybody. And then Marie, you can unmute yourself, see if that works. Okay, Marie, if you could unmute.
Okay,
All right,
is
let's
that
try
better?
I think it does, yes.
Okay. So the question I have about everything that's been discussed tonight, plans A, B, C, and I hear people on the board saying they prefer this, they prefer that. Is dismissing this altogether not an option? I guess I'd kind of like an answer as to whether this is definitely going forward. It's just a matter of A, B, and C, or is there a chance this is not going to go forward?
So absolutely. So there's 5 members on the board and we all get a vote. Greg, correct me if I'm wrong. Does this just need 3 out of 5 to vote yes?
Yes.
So this permit needs 3 out of 5 members to say yes to it when that vote comes up.
Okay.
We may narrow it down to one plan that we try to focus on, and there could be 3 members that say no, and then this would stop. We wouldn't just dismiss it in the middle because someone asked. We would let the process play out the way it should. and then we'd have a vote at the end.
And is there precedence out there, aside from all the issues that have been discussed, is there precedence out there that when you have, 26 out of 28 homes in the neighborhood dead against this, is there any precedence for that weighs on the decision? Or does it all come down to legal issues and you can't prevent them from doing it, or you need to just keep working with them till it's accepted? Like, this is the first time I've ever encountered this. And, we've been in this neighborhood 15 years. So that's why I'm asking the questions. I'm not trying to stir the pot.
Yep. So the planning board has rules and regulations, and they've shown that they can comply with those rules and regulations by removing the cul-de-sac, putting the new cul-de-sac down, and they have one waiver request left. We don't have to grant them that request if we don't want to, but we try to always work with the applicants. I believe if they had no waiver requests, then we'd have a very difficult time saying no to this or negotiating this, but we're also listening to the neighbors. From what I've heard from the neighbors, if it does go through, we're going to have to grant more waivers because they would like the cul-de-sac to stay. So we have the power here on the planning board to waive things like that to make it a better project.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, we're going to move on to Carol has her hand up. So if you can unmute Carol.
I'm Carol Rowan West. I live at 76 Oakman Way in Marshfield. Okay. And I have a few questions and comments I'd like to make. The first one is about the public comment period for this project. Anna touched upon the fact that, the public comment period for the submittals was June 1st, and then 2 to 3 hours before the public comment period ended, a new submittal came in. And the planning board did give us one more day until 4 p.m. But because of the fact that people were working, people were away, it was really an insufficient amount of time for the people in the neighborhood to be able to review all the new plans and to be able to provide comments.
So
because of that, may I just finish, please? Thank you. Because of that,
Carol, give me 1 second. I will say I agree with you on that. We're not going to make any decisions tonight. We are going to have another hearing on this, I believe.
Okay. Good.
And go ahead.
Okay, good. I was concerned that you would make a decision and we wouldn't have had time to thoroughly review what we just got and to submit comments for you to consider.
I believe you will have sufficient time because we will not make a decision tonight unless someone makes a motion that I'm totally unaware of.
Okay, excellent. That wasn't clear. And then Dennis kind of touched upon the Title V issue, and I just wanted to raise the point that I'm concerned about the fact that both the planning department and Pat Brennan requested that the septic system for lot number 2 be moved outside of the water resource protection.
Yeah, he didn't request it. He made a suggestion.
Okay. In the response to comments from the applicant, they said if areas outside of the zone 2 are unsuitable, that the location that is currently proposed would need to be implemented. And I guess I'm not seeing this as a yes or no about where it goes. I think it has to be no, that this septic system should not be in the water resource protection area.
So it can absolutely be inside the water resource protection area. There's no problems with that. It would need to be a special type of system.
Special type of system. Okay.
Well, okay. Let me go to the expert. Pat has his hand up and he will answer that. Much more qualified than me on that.
Thanks, Mike. Lot 2 has 65,000 square feet of area. Title 5 requires 10,000 square feet per bedroom. So technically, even though it's in the zone 2, they could have up to 6 bedrooms in that house. So there's no, from a Title 5 standpoint, there's no issue with having the septic system in the zone 2. Marshfield, you guys have more stringent regulations for the amount of nitrogen that comes off particular property. However, I think as Greg had mentioned before, when you're looking at a project that's under 5 lots, the planning board really doesn't have any authority over that. It's strictly the Board of Health. But from the Board of Health point of view, that system being in the zone 2, there's really not an issue with it. I just thought it would be better to remove it from the zone 2 if they're able to do so. But legally, they can permit it where they have it right now.
Okay, well, thank you for your comment. I'd like to look into that a little bit more. So in our comments, we had raised the fact that the DPW might not be able to maintain the extension of Jedediah Path due to insufficient funds, for example, for snow removal. And the response back to us is that the homeowners association in that case would have to pay for maintenance of the extension. And we think that that is a fee that would be imposed upon the neighborhood, the existing neighborhood. And that, number one, we don't want the extension. And number two, we certainly don't want to have to pay for roadway maintenance. So we're against that aspect of the response to our comments.
Okay, Greg and Kevin, is this proposed as in a private association for the 2 homes?
Yeah, well, if the town won't, if the town does not accept the road, we're gonna have a homeowners association that will maintain their portion of the roadway. That fee would not go to the existing residents. That would just be on the proposed portion.
Thank you.
So if I understand you right, it would be for the people in the 2 new homes,
Correct.
not for the rest of the neighborhood.
That is correct.
Okay. And one last question I have is that once when I was talking to Greg Goumand, he mentioned that the town needs a waiver when there are more than 8 homes on a dead-end street. And under the proposal, there'd be 9 homes on a dead-end street. And I haven't really seen or heard that come up in the discussion, that there'd be a need for that waiver as well.
Kevin, is that in your waiver request, or do you understand it differently?
I actually understand it a bit differently, and Greg and I have sort of talked about this. A type B road can provide access to 8 homes or less. A type C road, I believe, is 25. And I think the roadway typical profile we have meets the standard of a type C, 20 feet of pavement and 2 sidewalks. A type B, the difference between a type C and a type B is 1 sidewalk versus 2. And
Greg, do you agree with Kevin's?
Well, the type C, the original 1988 type C is what they have now. The current one, I believe, Kevin, you have the sidewalk right up against the Cape Cod berm, which the DPW engineering staff is against, and so is the planning staff.
Okay, so there might be a waiver request.
We have repeatedly asked for that waiver and what was the public benefit, but we have not heard back on that yet.
so just to respond to that, we don't know what we're designing yet. We are happy to ask for the specific waivers once we know what we have. Because I have 3 different options with 3 different lists. So
I believe by the time this discussion's over with the neighbors tonight, we will lean you in one direction. The board will.
Thank you.
Okay. Carol, any other questions?
Can you just, what is your response again about the waiver for 8 or 9 homes? It depends on.
We are not sure if it's required yet or not, depending on what type of road we deem this to be.
C or B.
Correct.
Okay.
And if it is required for a waiver, they could request it and we could grant that or deny that.
Yeah. So my last comment is just that we hate to see our Blueberry Hills estate go through this kind of a new development. And I would prefer that the new lots were developed off Forest Street, which is another whole issue, but it's just too disruptive for our neighborhood and all the people who live here.
And then just to ask you the same question that I asked most of the other people, where they told me, are you in favor of keeping the first cul-de-sac or getting rid of it and having one straight road?
Keeping the cul-de-sac.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Who is next? Put your hand up. Well, might be getting down there. John, I think we already heard from John. You can unmute, John.
You heard from Maureen.
Oh, okay. You got me there, John. Okay, John, go ahead. Name and address, please.
John Vazina, 156 Jedediah's Path. I just have a couple of points. A couple of them came up recently based on some comments. Could I ask a question about the type B, type C? I understand that that has to be determined, and I know one has to do with, 8 or less dwellings on a dead-end street. Would Jedediah's Path in its entirety be considered an entity? And then if it was a type C street, I believe they would have to request a waiver for greater than 25 houses on Jedediah's Path.
I believe it's from the first. I believe it's from the first. It's not the whole street. It's where it goes down from there.
Oh, when it goes to the dead end.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So it's shorter than what you're thinking.
Okay. That was one. Okay, and then based on the last discussion that we had about if the DPW is not going to maintain the street, and if the homeowners association has to be responsible for that, and they would foot the bill for that, but who do the homeowners that currently reside here contact for problems with the street? No snow removal, storm drains covered,
It doesn't change from whatever you do now.
Well, we would call the DPW now, but if the DPW
continue.
What's that?
Then you would continue to call the DPW on your section.
I thought we had said that if the DPW would not maintain that street, which would.
They're not going to change your street maintenance.
Okay, I thought that's what we just said.
No, we're only talking about the extension of the street.
Yeah.
See,
that's what I'm talking about. The extension of, so I live, I'm sorry. It's a personal matter. I don't mean to get excited. I abut the new roadway that's being proposed.
Yes.
I am on that roadway. I'm not.
You would not be part of the association.
I understand that. You told me that.
Okay.
So, but I am on that roadway.
Okay.
And now I have a storm drain in front of my house that's covered with snow and ice, and I have a pond in front of my driveway. Who do I call to correct that situation?
Is your driveway on? Well, you're talking about in the original proposal, not leaving the cul-de-sac, because they would still go right around that cul-de-sac in the proposal, I believe we're leaning toward.
Either way, I'm sorry. If somebody wants to put up the plan picture, but either way, we're at a low point. We had already discussed that the storm drain would be there. And I'm just using that as an example. What about just regular snow removal from that pathway? We live on that new road. We will be living on the private part of that roadway. We live on it. We will be living on it.
Isn't your driveway on the cul-de-sac now?
Right now, my driveway dumps out onto the cul-de-sac.
It would not move.
I don't know if he'll let you, but
I can listen to your wife and maybe she can explain it differently to me.
What we're trying to say is part of the border of our land in the new plan will now be the private road. So whereas now our entire property is on the cul-de-sac, with a straightaway or with an extension, the piece of our property that now touches the Bristol property is now a road, and it's a private road. So how do we handle that?
I believe if you had an issue with that private road, you'd contact the association.
Okay,
Okay.
that's the question.
Mhm.
So they would provide contact information that if the
They would be your
storm-
neighbors. I don't know who your neighbors are going to be yet. Someone else is going to move in there.
Well, I just respectfully, then the board should consider that when they're making this decision about the impact it has onto the existing neighborhood, that is a burden, an additional burden now being put on us, that we have to contact a homeowners association to maintain a road that's in front of our house. That's all I'm saying, that we're not a part of.
Okay, I don't know if I would call it a burden, but I understand it might be an inconvenience. Maybe that's a burden too, but I think we will take that into consideration, John.
Okay, all right, thank you. And one last point. So we have a landscape bed that's at the edge of our property, and it extends into the Bristol parcel and it extends onto town land. It has landscape rocks. It has a very mature maple tree that is on Bristol's land that is part of our landscaping bed. Certainly, so my position is we don't want this plan to be approved. That would be our recommendation to the board.
Okay.
If it is approved by the board, we will look into adverse possession with the trial court in order to, that landscaping area has been there for 25 years since this property has been developed. And
we don't deal with that adverse possession here. We don't deal with that.
I guess all I'm saying, I'm just putting it out there for the record that that is something that whatever developer is doing this should consider on approval. I know you don't consider it. I'm just saying, if you approve it, that is something that we would need to look into.
That's absolutely up to you.
Yep.
And town council actually answered this issue based on a written summary about.
I don't want to cut you off, but it's a non-issue about.
No. Well, he said that it's on our concern is on town land. We just want to say, no, it's not all town land.
That's completely fine. Adverse possession has nothing to do with us. So I just want to stick to the facts here.
Thank you, Mike.
All
Sorry.
right, thank you.
Hey, Mike, can I weigh in on this just for
absolutely.
a minute? So I guess one thing, clearly the neighbors are advocating for the cul-de-sac to remain. I guess just one thing I want to reiterate that I mentioned, the question I asked earlier about in that scheme where the existing cul-de-sac remains, it does require sidewalks to be provided around the existing cul-de-sac. So there will be work done within the right of way of the existing cul-de-sac, if I'm still understanding this correctly.
No, they're not proposing anything on the cul-de-sac if they do that. It would stay that it would remain the same.
But the outside of the existing cul-de-sac would need the sidewalk to continue to the new road.
Kevin, do you propose anything in that plan B, we'll call it?
We'll be looking for direction from the board on what their preference would be.
Because I think that would narrow the road down even more, Nick, and make it even more difficult.
I guess my assumption was the sidewalk would go within the right of way around the existing cul-de-sac and not encroach on the roadway itself.
Yeah, I don't believe it's proposed at all that way.
I was under the same impression as Nick, that this would have to go along the existing roadway, would be a sidewalk so that the two sidewalks were connected.
Because otherwise, I guess there would potentially be a waiver to not provide any sidewalk.
No, because they're not touching the cul-de-sac, so they're not proposing anything on that. So the waiver would only be beyond the cul-de-sac.
The existing cul-de-sac has no sidewalks.
Yeah, but they're not touching it. We can ask them to provide that if we want, but I don't think in Plan B they'd be required to. Because the property doesn't start till the back of that cul-de-sac.
So Michael, you're saying that you're not expecting them to have a continuous sidewalk.
Well, they did not have that on Plan B right now, and it's a good point that Nick brings up. So if that's something you want to see on the plan, then let's let Kevin know now, you know? So I think what we need to first do is say, are we leaning toward Plan B? Is the board here leaning toward 2 cul-de-sacs? And then if we are leaning toward that, then we need to give them guidance of how to design it. If we would like to see sidewalks on the old cul-de-sac, we need to tell that to Kevin now. So at the next meeting, we can have a plan that we can really work off of. So Nick, would you like to see, are you more in favor of Plan A or Plan B? And we've heard from everybody, so you need to come up with one now.
Well, I would just say if the existing cul-de-sac were to remain, I would recommend sidewalks be provided around that existing cul-de-sac to the new road extension. I just think that makes in that scenario, I think that would make the most sense. I'm still not going to comment on either way, which scheme is my preference.
Well, I think next time Kevin comes back to us, he needs to come back to us with one plan of which we have leaned toward. So if you don't want to have a preference, then it will be up to me, Katie, and Kevin to have a preference. Katie?
I think it's hard to determine a preference before. I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse, making a decision before we have a final plan.
Well, I don't think you're making a decision on saying yes or no to the plan, but we need a plan to work off of. We can't just keep looking at 2 separate plans and not having them put their effort into one plan. So I'm not asking you to vote on the plan. I'm just saying, would you like to see them come back with no cul-de-sac? Or would you like to see them come back with a cul-de-sac, which is, and I'm talking about the first cul-de-sac when I say that, the original one.
So I'll step in again. So I think with the comments from the fire chief, and I think the challenges I see with keeping the existing and the inherent sidewalk that would need to be provided, that I would prefer to be provided, I would lean actually now towards removing the cul-de-sac. I think it would actually make it a better scenario within the neighborhood. So it just doesn't look like, I think over time, it will look like it was always there.
Okay.
If you extend the new cul-de-sac and remove the existing.
Nick's for the first plan. That's fine. Katie or Kevin, which way are you leaning?
I'd like to see Plan B.
Plan B. Okay, so me and Kevin are for Plan B. Nick's for Plan A, and Katie is for.
I'm with Nick. I'm leaning that way.
Awesome. 50-50. Love it. Where's Fred when you need him? Tiebreaker. That's why we have 5 people. Okay, so great. I'm going to go back to the public for a minute here. Is there anyone else from the public that hasn't spoken that would like to speak at this time? Because it's 9 o'clock. We're going to start wrapping this up and continuing this hearing. All right.
Hi, I'm sorry, Michael. It took me a second to find the Chris White, 108 Jedediah's Path. I just wanted to affirm, as my neighbors did, the desire to keep the existing cul-de-sac. And I'm not going to belabor anything else.
Great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mike, may I ask a question just for clarification? I know I spoke, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Anna.
So as you're considering this and you're saying Plan A or B, B being you keep the cul-de-sac with the landscape design in place in the middle of the cul-de-sac, correct?
Well, I don't think the landscape part of that has been figured out because it's going to probably go back to the fire chief and what he decides. So I can't answer that part, but yes, B is keeping the cul-de-sac.
Keeping the cul-de-sac, and you perhaps will consider the landscape situation as well. And also, I'm assuming we need clarification from the BPW and you'll get final clarification on that. So when we come forward again, we have everybody's thoughts on that, correct?
You mean on if it's going to be private or public?
No, the BPW voted to maintain the cul-de-sac. So hopefully you'll.
We already know that answer.
Yep, that. Okay, all right.
We
I
already agree with that.
Clarification on that. All right.
Yep, there's no question there.
All right, thank you.
All right. Greg?
Michael, clarification on the record was not closed? But the record for written comments and submittals, we gave them the additional day. And that was because the last time we received an 8-page letter the morning of the public hearing, which the board members really didn't have a thorough time to do. So what I had suggested to Anna and the rest of them was have your comments available when we, as we typically do for submittals for applicants, it would be that Wednesday before.
Greg.
The applicant did not, could I finish, Ann?
Yeah, of course, sorry.
The applicant gave it to us 3 minutes after noon. We looked at it and then sent it out at 1:10 to the residents, so they were aware of it. And I did say, you could have until the end of the next business day because we realized that it came in, right at the end of the time frame. So just like this next continued public hearing, and that didn't say that the residents could not speak tonight. That's part of the record as well. And just like next time, public speaking will be still invited. But if you have written comments, you needed to get it to us in time to get it to the board so they could read it.
Last time, as you know, we did.
Anna, I didn't follow you.
Okay, may I speak? I'm sorry.
I don't think we need a response to Greg if that's what it is. He's just making a point. And I understand. I already understand your point.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there anything else besides Greg? Anna, anything else besides what he said?
No, we tried to submit that Thursday is all I was trying to say. So it wasn't that we waited until that day. I just wanted to clarify that.
I understand.
Thank you.
All right. So at this time, unless any other board members have anything, Kevin, unfortunately, I thought we were going to get somewhere, but we're at 50-50. I
appreciate the effort.
Can we weigh in with Fred, Greg, if he reviews this meeting and see which way he's leaning?
You would have to either probably watch this tape and stuff, and then decide that he wants to join.
So what I'll do is I'll talk to Fred tomorrow, see if he can watch the tape, and if he has an opinion one way or the other, we will then contact Kevin as soon as we can and let him know which way it's leaning. And then it's up to Kevin to
I believe you'd have to do that in the public hearing, though.
What, ask Fred to look at it?
Fred would have to say what he was thinking at a public hearing. I don't think we can just say, Fred, what are you thinking, and go from there.
Oh, okay.
And he needs to sign an affidavit to state he had watched it and file that with the town clerk.
Okay. All right, that's fine. So, Greg, what's the continuing date, please?
Well, your next meeting, you got 3 new public hearings, I believe, Karen, right? So it would probably be a late night if we go with the 27th of June.
Are they subdivision public hearings?
No, they're 3 street improvements.
Oh. Well, let's put it on for there anyway, for the 27th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it would be 6/27/22 at 7:05. And it's probably going to be later in the evening.
It's definitely not going to be
7:05. Everything's 7:05 on my agenda. So, because too many people push things and we're not waiting around a half hour.
And it probably is until after 8.
Possibly. So, all right. I'm going to make a motion that we continue this public hearing until June 27th, 2022 at 7:05. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick?
Oh, Greg, don't we have that you'll be at the MAPC presentation, or no, the MVP presentation to the selectmen, right, on the 27th too?
Yes, I'll be over at the selectmen's meeting for a portion of that meeting. I'm hoping it's not going to be the whole meeting.
Just for everybody's consideration, if
I
we
would
still want it.
definitely like to have Greg there.
Well, we're in the middle of a motion, so vote against it.
Mike, I would expect that if we're not getting into this until 8 o'clock, that I should be back here by 8 o'clock.
Is that okay, Katie? How about if Greg's not here, maybe we can't do it? at that time. Because I'm fine. I really would like Greg here as well. I have no problems with that.
Yeah. That's
You're
fine.
saying-
Sorry, you guys cut out. I couldn't hear for a second, but.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying,
No, sorry if I wasn't responsive.
if Greg isn't here at 8 o'clock, maybe we find out if he's only going to be a few minutes, or if he's not here and you're not comfortable having that hearing that night, then we will just postpone it again that night. Continue it again.
When's our first meeting in July? Does that, I'm just thinking the number of people who come out, if there's a chance that this is going to be postponed, I wouldn't want, 24 people setting their night aside. I just don't know what's on the next agenda. I don't know if that makes sense.
July 11th is the next date.
And whenever July hits, we start missing members.
Exactly.
July and August, we start missing members.
Hey, Greg, can you ask why can't you ask Select to put you on first on the agenda?
I'm hoping that we are, because it is a consultant guest doing a presentation.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to continue the motion, and we'll have to, I think it's getting pushed out really far if we don't try to get it on the next hearing. So,
Well, we're also running up against the time frame that we have to issue a decision. So
Yeah, no, I think it's just good that we all know what's going on and we'll make it happen.
okay.
I'll second. O'Donnell.
No, we already had the second. You already voted yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, I had you and I had Nick. I was on Kevin.
Oh, I didn't vote. I didn't vote yet.
On continuing?
No, Karen jumped in for a minute.
Didn't you second? All right, let's just start it over. I'm going to make a motion. We continue the public hearing until June 27th, 2022 at 7:05. Katie?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Thank you. Nick?
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Kevin?
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
And Mike Biviano, aye. Okay, we'll see everyone back on the 27th. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, we're going to move on to board and staff report, and then we'll be finishing up after that.
I don't have anything for you, Mike.
Awesome, Greg. Anyone from the board have anything?
No.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging in on this meeting, and it was productive, and I will make a motion to close tonight's public hearing. Is there a second?
Kevin Cantwell, second.
Thank you, Kevin. And say aye, Kevin.
Aye, Kevin Cantwell.
Thank you, Katie.
Katie O'Donnell, aye.
Thank you, Nick.
Nick Papastratus, aye.
And Mike Biviano, aye. That concludes tonight's meeting. Thank you.